Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and I'm back with you today for another video. And today my video is going to be focusing on Kevin Love and potential trades that the Cavaliers could do with some other teams that would be mutually beneficial, hopefully, for both sides. I'm going to do this because there's been a lot of talk in the media lately about whether Kevin Love will or will not be traded. The Cavaliers at first had come out with a statement saying that they would not trade Kevin Love right before LeBron signed with the Lakers. And then afterwards, they said that they were open to the idea and they would just want to do whatever's best for Kevin Love. So, with that being said, I think that he will ultimately end up being traded. And so that got me to thinking about a few of the teams that he might end up with. And so I wrote, or should I say, I thought of 5 different teams that he could potentially get traded to. And I'm going to get into that today and talk about it a bit. So what I looked for with teams what I looked for regarding teams that might work well with Kevin Love were teams where they lacked a strong power forward or a lack of a post game or a lack of an outside shooting game, because those are the areas in which Kevin Love is strongest, and he really can help a team from a three-point shooting perspective or a rebounding perspective or even an offense on the low post perspective, because not many times did the Cavs use his skill set for offense, but he is a strong offensive player on the block, and they didn't have him go down there as much because they wanted to space the floor for LeBron. But in Minnesota, he was on the block a lot, and actually primarily on the block or at the high post, and didn't really shoot that many threes. But in Cleveland, they really only had him be a glorified spot-up shooter, honestly. So I think a trade would really help him get back to his offensive game that he was doing in Minnesota, where he had some three-point shots, but honestly, he was a high post and low post scorer and would only occasionally shoot from three-point land. But let's get into the teams that I have written down here. So the first is the Portland Trail Blazers, and I should just say before this actually, for all the teams I have him being traded to, I've worked it out so all the salaries match, and that's not like I'm just pulling them off thin air and saying, oh, well, hopefully the salaries would work out too. But no, I've looked at all the salaries for the players being traded, and so all these trades would work under the caps of the teams and the contracts being exchanged. So my first team I have for Kevin Love is the Portland Trail Blazers, and I have them trading Kevin Love straight up for CJ McCollum. The main reason for this trade is because Portland just seems like they might need to shake something up. The current roster, I feel like, is a bit stale. Not that they're bad. I think they could easily get to the playoffs again this next year. But I just feel like they'll probably just lose in the first round again. This team doesn't scream to me Western Conference Finals. And even honestly now, not really second round. I feel like the Rockets, Warriors, Lakers, Nuggets, Thunder, Jazz, they're all better than the Trailblazers to me. I'd say the Pelicans are right about even with them, probably a bit better. I mean, they did sweep them in the playoffs last year. So, I don't know, they could be looking at around the 6, 7, 8, or even out of the playoffs as far as what seed they might be next year. So I feel like it might just be a good chance for them to pull off a big trade and just to see what some of their big pieces could get on the open market. Typically, Damian Lillard is the guy that's been dangled, but I feel like CJ McCollum and Kevin Love are pretty similar in their value. They're both about the second or third best, probably the second best player on a playoff team and the third best player on a championship team. So that being said, their salaries nearly match $24.5 million to $25 million. So I think that would be a good trade opportunity. The Trailblazers get a guy who has won a championship, knows how to win, has been in that scenario a lot lately, and they don't really give up any talent in that he's around the same level of production as CJ McCollum. He's about 20 points a game and probably 11 rebounds if he's the second option to Dame. And I would really like this trade for the Trailblazers in that they just signed Seth Curry so he could slot in as your starting shooting guard, and you're not really it's not like there's a huge hole at shooting guard then. You still have a guy that can play the position competently, and you don't have a huge void there. And then also I like this for the Cavaliers in that CJ McCollum is a bit younger, so you have a younger guy to help build around with Colin Sexton and whoever else they try and get in the future. If they keep Jordan Clarkson, then him too. So, yeah, I like this trade for both sides, both talented players, and both have benefits to being traded to the other team, I think. So moving on from the Blazers, the next team I have is the Washington Wizards. And I feel like this package is not as good for the Cavaliers, but there still is a reason why they would take it, and I'll explain that in a minute. So the trade I have is Jason Smith, Markieff Morris, Austin Rivers for Kevin Love. And again, the contracts do match up as far as the money, and so that money all matches up. And I like this trade more for the Wizards than the Cavs, but I'll get into the Cavs side of it first. So Jason Smith, Markieff Morris, and Austin Rivers are all expiring contracts, and I feel like that might be really appealing to the Cavs in the same way expiring contracts were appealing last year to the Lakers and this year to the Nets a bit and last year to the Nets a bit, in that once they're off the salary, the payroll, then you have so much free cap space to go on and sign free agents the next year. Whereas if they didn't trade Kevin Love, they'd have him for 2 more years instead of getting all these guys done just after this season. They'll have a lot of free cap space, which I think that they would like. No one's really that talented out of those three. Markieff Morris and Austin Rivers could probably slide in as starters. Austin Rivers and Jordan Clarkson are of a similar talent level, I would say, so you could choose who would be the sixth man and who would be the starter next to Colin Sexton. And Markieff Morris would probably start at power forward. I think that the main reason you do this trade is, do the Cavs want to be a 33-win team with Kevin Love balling out, or do they want to be an 18-win team and have a bunch of cap space next offseason and a really high draft pick? I feel like they'd rather have the second scenario, because in that option they have a lot of flexibility, and I feel like their options are a lot more wide open rather than having Kevin Love, having no cap space, and getting maybe the 10th pick in the draft. I feel like that's just not as appealing. To endure one really bad year for a much more promising future, I think, is the better option. And for Washington, they could sport a starting lineup of John Wall, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, Kevin Love, and Dwight Howard, which I think is a really potent starting lineup, with Jeff Green as your sixth man, which I think was a good pickup, by the way. But yeah, you've got 3 bona fide all-star scorers in that starting lineup. You've got some defense in Dwight, and maybe if you get in Kevin Love there, you could convince him, seeing as he would be the 4th option on offense, he might just totally drop the whole spiel about trying to be a number 1 option and just fully commit to defense for once and not even focus on his offense. That would really be the best thing for these Wizards if they got Kevin Love in this scenario. For Dwight to just not even try and be an offensive player, maybe average 10 points a game, but 14 rebounds and 2 to 3 blocks a game. That would really be what would be best for the Wizards if this scenario were to work out well. So yeah, that's that scenario. That's one of my favorites of all these. I think it works really well for both teams, but moving on to the next one. So the next one I have would be Kevin Love to the Phoenix Suns, and the Cavaliers would be getting back Tyson Chandler and T.J. Warren. This deal has a similar feel to the other one, the Wizards, in that a main motivation for the Cavs would be that Tyson Chandler is an expiring contract, just has 1 year left, and then he's gone. That would free up $16 million in cap space after he's gone. And then also you get T.J. Warren back, who's a promising young player, can put in about 16 points a game. On the Cavs, you'd say he might even be the number 1 option on that Cavs team going into next year. He might get up to about 20 points a game. The Cavs have a hole at small forward now that LeBron's gone, and I don't really know that they want to start Kyle Korver at the 3 or J.R. Smith at the 3. They're not really small forwards. They're shooting guards. And Rodney Hill is going to be gone, so they're going to be looking for more wings, I think. So I think this deal works out well for the Cavs. They'll get cap space after next year, and they'll get a nice young guy in T.J. Warren who can be the primary option on a bad scoring team, and can help Colin Sexton develop a little bit and have somebody there to just be the man for him and be the primary scoring option. You could say Kevin Love would be the primary scoring option with Colin Sexton, but if they keep Kevin Love, again, they don't get as high of a draft pick. I feel like with TJ Warren, they'd still, with this current trade, I feel like the Cavs would still be around a 25-win team. So, or, you know, in the low 20s. So I feel like that would still get them around the 5th pick or better in the draft. So I think that they would still take that. And so, yeah, that's the same scenario, sort of like they'd just be doing it for a rebuilding thing to have more options going forward. And from the Suns side, then you could sport a starting lineup of, I don't really know who they have at point guard. I guess Tyler Ulis is their starter right now. But Tyler Ulis, Devin Booker, Trevor Ariza, or Josh Jackson, depending on who they decide to start. And then Kevin Love at the 4 and DeAndre Ayton at the 5. I think that this would be really good for the Suns, and that DeAndre Ayton is really a natural center. So with Tyson Chandler out of there, the deck is cleared for DeAndre Ayton to be the clear-cut starter at 5. Kevin Love can space the floor at the 4, which gives DeAndre Ayton more space to work down low. I think a big thing that would have put a lot of pressure on the Suns would be for DeAndre Ayton to really develop his outside game, because if you play him and Tyson Chandler at the same time, one of them is going to have to space the floor and Chandler can't. So I feel like DeAndre Ayton would have been pushed into a lot of uncomfortable outside shots. But if this trade goes through, then you got Kevin Love there to space the floor, so Ayton can really just work on his inside game. And also it adds just another decoy to Devin Booker, so he's not getting double teamed as much and getting better looks for everybody all around. Plus, if you get rid of TJ Warren, you're also going to clear out space on the wings where they already had a lot. And so then Josh Jackson and Trevor Ariza get more playing time and don't have to compete for time as much, which I think would be good for Jackson's development and Trevor Ariza being a mentor. I feel like it just means more when a mentor plays a decent amount of minutes. Otherwise, they lose their credibility a little bit, I think. But either way, Trevor Ariza probably wouldn't mind. But I just think it'd be healthier for their small forward position if they did this trade, because it would free up more time for the developing Josh Jackson. The next trade I have, the 4th one on here, would be an interesting one, and I'll get into it right now. So it would be straight up Kevin Love for Andrew Wiggins, which would be interesting because that's the trade that exactly went down in the offseason in 2014. Those guys are traded for each other, but now they'd be traded back for each other. The Timberwolves are sort of disgruntled with Andrew Wiggins' work ethic and effort on the basketball court, and he has a lot of talent, but he just doesn't really put it out there and doesn't really try. I think he plays more for the money than to win, and he has the money now, so I feel like he's giving minimum effort, but still giving enough effort to be a decent NBA player. But I think him for Kevin Love would be good in that the Cavs can get a much younger player and can sort of brandish it as a rebuild, and I think that their win total would also go down significantly and again be in the low 20s, because I don't think Andrew Wiggins alone translates a team to wins. And so Colin Sexton would have another guy on the wing to dish the ball to, but they wouldn't have the threat with Kevin Love of being a 30-plus win team, and they could assure a high draft pick next year. Along with that, the Timberwolves would be getting Love back, who I think would be good for the team, not because he's great on defense, which seems to be a big problem for them, but I think because he's just a better offensive player than Wiggins, and also he's a winner now that he's gone to the Cavs and been to the finals 4 straight times, and he has a ring. He could teach Cat and them a little bit about the importance of winning, which I think would be a good thing. And I think Jimmy Butler would get along better with Kevin Love because Kevin Love played in the Olympics. Jimmy Butler recently played in the Olympics. That's something that you can sort of bond over, I guess. And I think just Kevin Love has a lot more cred overall than Andrew Wiggins. You know, Kevin Love's a 5-time All-Star. Wiggins has never been an All-Star, yet has all the talent to be, which is embarrassing for him. So, yeah, I like this trade for both sides. The thing with the Timberwolves, though, is here's a contingency. I think they would have to do another trade after that and trade one of their big men, because then they would have Cat, Kevin Love, Taj Gibson, and Gorgui Dieng, which I think would just be too crowded in the front court. So the trade I ultimately came up with was Taj Gibson to the Utah Jazz for Alec Burks for the Timberwolves then, because the Timberwolves really need a starting shooting guard if they're going to get rid of Wiggins on the wing. They'd slide Butler to small forward and start Alec Burks at shooting guard. And then the Jazz were a team that's sort of searching for a power forward, I feel like, or a backup power forward, in that they have Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert, but they don't really have anyone to come in and sub for them who's all that competent. They have Epi Udoh, who I don't think is a really good NBA player whatsoever. And so Taj Gibson would give him a lot of toughness and add to the defensive culture there and would just fit right in, I think. When Gobert goes out, you can slide Favors to the 5 and put Gibson in at the 4. And when Gobert's in and you want Favors out, you can put Gibson in at the 4. So I think he fits really well there as a backup, much like he did in Chicago with Boozer and Noah and subbing in for either of those guys. So that's that trade. And moving on to the final one, it would be the Toronto Raptors trading with the Cavaliers, and it would be Serge Ibaka and OG Anunoby for Kevin Love. And the main thing about this trade is that it would be a salary dump for the Cavaliers again. I think this actually would be the worst return for the Cavs of any of these in this deal. Serge Ibaka, really not the player he used to be. Could probably put up 15 points a game on the Cavs, maybe, if he's like really on offense. And I think you just have to throw an OG here because they need like some incentive to trade for Serge Ibaka, because if you don't, he's basically an albatross around your neck. But OG is only making about $1 million a year on his rookie deal, so you're getting a very quality rotation player for $1 million. And Serge, I think he's done not after this next season, but the season after that, which is when you'd have J.R. Smith's deal coming off the books. Not Iman Shumpert, I'm sorry, he's gone. But J.R. Smith, Tristan Thompson, and Serge would all be gone. And that would create about $55 million in cap space for the Cavs, which I think that they would really like. And you'd be a cellar dweller, I think, for the next 2 years, so you get really high draft picks. So you'd probably have around, after these 2 seasons, so in the offseason of 2020, you're looking at the Cavaliers having Colin Sexton, OG Anunoby, let's see here, and then like a top 5 pick in the 2019 draft and the 2020 draft. So that would look pretty promising for a nice young core, and I would like that. I don't know that I would like it personally, but I think if you're trying to rebuild, that would be a pretty good start because, I don't know, it's just a good young core. You have 4 solid pieces there. That's taken for granted that the 2 draft picks would work out well, but let's just make that an assumption here. So, yeah, that would be the side for the Cavaliers there. And then in that year, in the offseason and free agency, they'd have around $55 million in cap space. So I think that would be a plus for them too. And then for the Raptors side, I think that Kevin Love's a definite upgrade over Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka has essentially tried to become Kevin Love, I feel like. He went from a big block machine and rebounder to essentially a stretch 4, trying to shoot threes, getting a few rebounds, but he's only averaging around 6 a game now because he is like afraid to go inside the 3-point line anymore. But Kevin Love's essentially just an upgrade overall. He's actually a bona fide 3-point shooter. He has a total offensive repertoire, and he gets 10 to 11 rebounds a game. So he's just better than Ibaka all around, because Ibaka's defensive game is essentially gone these days. So you're really not missing anything on the defensive end. And then you could run out the starting lineup of Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, C.J. Miles, Kevin Love, and Valanciunas. And you can say that you've changed something up, but you really haven't lost any of your core pieces. And you can essentially run it back and just see maybe if that team is good enough to get to the finals. Because I feel like if you trot out that starting lineup with that really deep bench that they've got, you can definitely challenge the Celtics for the East. It's not out of reach, honestly. And with the Cavs gone, the big bad wolf is gone, the Raptors might be an entirely different team, and we don't even know. So I really like Kevin Love on that team too. He'd know that he's the third option, I think, behind Lowry and DeRozan. DeRozan being the 1, Lowry the 2, and Love the 3. They could bump him up to the 2 if they think that Lowry's struggling a lot or Love is really thriving in their offense. And yeah, I don't think he'd be tired at all. The bench is so deep that he could get a lot of rest for the playoffs, which would maybe help with his injury issues. If he could rest more often, he wouldn't have to miss 20 games a year like he has been doing a little more often lately, which is unfortunate. But Kevin Love's an injury-prone guy, so if you could get him in a system where he gets more rest, I think that's all the better because he's missed a lot of time over the years, but no one really ever thinks about that, actually. But yeah, that's my video. So those are the 5 teams I had. So the Blazers, the Wizards, the Suns, the Timberwolves, and the Raptors. Not all these trades, actually, I'd say about 4 of the 5 don't really benefit the Cavs immediately, because I feel like with their current roster construction, their max win total is going to be about 35 if they really overachieve. So I think the best option for them is honestly to just blow it up, trade away Kevin Love, get expiring contracts and draft picks for the future, or really young pieces who could develop a lot. Because I think if they do a bit of the process and get really bad now, then by the time all their big bad contracts like J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson come off the books, they'll have a lot more money to work with. They'll have a lot of draft picks. They'll have a lot of young players. And that's a more promising future than building around a 32-year-old Kevin Love 2 years from now, I think, along with Colin Sexton. So those are my thoughts. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Bye.